Hi, I'm Allie Hamilton, and I'm so happy to welcome you to the Come As You Are podcast. Every week, we'll be talking about some aspect of healing, usually around childhood wounds and complicated familial relationships. The topics will always coincide with my personal essay of the week, and this will be a place where we can take a deep dive together. I'm so thrilled you've joined me and delighted for you to always come as you are. Hi there. Hi there. Welcome to our talk today. The topic is, Oh, say, can you see? And I published the essay about this topic on the 4th. And I got back from Portugal via Paris on Monday night and had, pretty significant jet lag during the last few days. And so I was writing through some jet lag, which basically just felt like a slowed down, a slowed down brain, like just really trying to kind of like yell through water or whatever. But I got there. And of course, when you are on a yoga retreat, you're leading a retreat, you're in this environment where you're in, maybe you're in another country, depending on what's happening, which I was. And there are all these incredible excursions, and there's amazing food, and there's beautiful people that you're talking to, and you're getting to do yoga twice a day and, eat all the delicious organic food that's being prepared from you from the garden, and see all these amazing, it's your life is not, it would be great if life could always be like that, although maybe we wouldn't appreciate it as much if it were always like that. But you're in an incredible sort of like curated environment where you're getting to really slow down and enjoy and savor and soak up another culture, another way of being, different language, different rhythm, different color. It's beautiful, it's extraordinary. And so I came back, and almost instantly it was like the Supreme Court decision came down, and it's like, wow, it didn't even get like 13 hours of relief from what is happening here. So obviously we're not all going to agree on everything, and I don't ever expect us to all agree on everything, but I was certainly just holding my head in my hands and kind of screaming into the abyss. And the essay that I wrote was really about clear seeing. And one of the things that I've seen over the last 24 hours, there are a lot of people who feel the way I do, that just what is happening in our country is devastating and mind-boggling. And then there are people who do, who feel differently about that, and that's to be expected. But one of the recurring sort of like messages I was seeing on social media is people who were like very excited that it was the 4th, and people who were commenting like, I can't get excited this year. Like I'm struggling to, and it doesn't mean the response to that, that feeling of like, it's hard for me to really celebrate right now was, well, if you hate it in America so much, you should leave. And it's like, that's not it. It's like, you can love your country and also feel, just feel beside yourself about what's happening. And by my way of thinking, and again, I'm not going to talk about this for too long. Certainly the topic today is not this, but these are the waters that we are swimming in this country. So it would be kind of strange not to at least talk about those waters. Part of loving people, because it's always the microcosm and the macrocosm. There's always a reflection. Whatever's happening around us is a reflection of what is happening within us. And what we're seeing around us is a lot of violence, a lot of rage, a lot of fear. Those are the waters that we're swimming in. And so to not talk about it, to not name it, doesn't change that. And that's kind of what the essay was about, is just naming these things, being able to see clearly and say two things are possible at once. I can love my country and also call it out for all the places where there's a lot of work that needs to be done. I can love my country and be devastated by what just happened in the Supreme Court. Like, it's not an either or, it's an and. I can love my country and I can be, incredibly concerned and worried about what is happening. Those two things can be true at the same time. And for me, they certainly are. I love my country, but, by my way of thinking at this point, the Declaration of Independence is like America's Tinder profile. It's who we say we are, but it's not who we've been and it's not who we're being. And so and it's the same thing like with your bio, with your personal bio. Like, there's who you say you are, and then there's who you're being. And whatever that space is, if there's a space between those two things, that's where you have work to do. And I have always felt like the best possible scenario is when your bio, there is no space between your bio and who you're being. That's the ultimate idea, because that's when you're going to find ease and peace. You're not trying to be something you aren't. You're not saying you're something that you aren't. You're like, this is who I am. This is who I am. This is what I think. And there is no, there's no space between like that and then my actions. They're aligned. That's what we're looking for ultimately. So that was kind of the context that was on my mind. The name of the essay is "Oh Say, Can You See?" But I was also talking about this idea of seeing clearly. And this is a concept in yoga philosophy. Vidya means clear seeing, and viveka means discernment. And when I came upon these, when I started practicing yoga, I was 20. I was looking for something to I'd taken ballet for 12 years. I started when I was 4 and I stopped when I was 16. I knew that was not what I wanted to do with my life, but I was really looking for something to replace that physical intensity that I had experienced in the ballet studio, because that was the only time I got a break from all the storm that was happening in my mind all the time. I really felt like I needed that physical, I needed to be in my body, that visceral, somatic, experience of being in my body in order to quiet my mind. With ballet, what ended up happening for me, and it happened with yoga for a while too, is I beat my body up. Now, ballet, at least where I experienced it, New York City ballet, there was a lot of that. There's a lot of kind of starving the body and like beating the body into submission, and you're dancing on your toes, and that's not like the natural state. So I'd come home from the ballet studio and unwrap my feet, and I'd just be like, they'd be bleeding, and I'd soak my feet and do it again the next day. And that went on for years and years. And there was a lot of like body dysmorphia and disordered eating. And it was not a healthy environment for me. Doesn't mean that's always like that for people, but that was my experience. And it fed into kind of all of my type A perfectionist, never good enough, have to like earn the love, earn the worthiness, earn the gold stars. It really strengthened all those tendencies that already existed inside of me. And so when I first started, when I wandered into a yoga studio, I thought it was going to be too easy for me. I thought yoga was like stretching on the floor. And so I intentionally went to an advanced class, like a jackass. And so like a 20-year-old, let's say. And it was mind blowing, because people from my perspective were like levitating. I couldn't even believe what I was seeing. I didn't know how people were hovering above the ground, like in chaturanga even. I had a lot of flexibility, but really very little upper body strength, and that weight-bearing kind of upper body strength. And so that's what sucked me in at first, right? I was like really amazed and compelled to keep going, because I wanted to master this. I was like, oh, this is really hard. This is great for me. I can, beat myself up again. But eventually what happened is after, a few years of practice, I was very lucky to have wandered into just some beautiful yoga studios with some beautiful teachers. Dharma Mitra being one of them in New York City. And, the philosophy started to seep in. And I also started to experience, I think, this feeling of peace. And a lot of things happened at once after a while. I wasn't starving myself. I was just kind of like, my body found its natural weight, and I just ate in a way that was sustaining my energy. And that was part of the lifestyle as well. It's just like really thinking about what foods are going to be nourishing for me. I had never really thought about it that way before. I grew up at my mom's house. It was like Diet Coke and bologna and Miracle Whip and, white bread and like mealy apples, red delicious apples. Kraft American cheese. It was not a healthy, like a health food kind of vibe. My dad was at my dad's house. He was like pumpernickel bread and, natural peanut butter and like bananas and raw honey. And I hated it. So, but this was the first time in my life that I really started to recognize the connection between what I'm putting in my mouth and how I'm feeling, like what my energy levels are. And, so a lot of things happened at once for me, but it kind of took a hold of me in this way where I became fascinated with, why am I feeling better emotionally and mentally? Like what is it? Like I knew it was the yoga, but I couldn't quite understand why. And so then I started doing teacher trainings and like philosophy, they would have like lectures, and I would go because I wanted to have a better understanding. And so a few years in, I started to learn about the yama and niyama, which are basically like yoga's 10 commandments, like the shalls and the shall nots. Like I'm going to do these things and I'm not going to do these things. And it's just the ethical and moral foundation that honestly it's really just like the basic stuff for being a decent person. It's not religious. It's not, it's nothing that we don't teach our kids. It's like, how to like be kind, how to think about your impact on the people around you and the world around you, how to like not be greedy, not be taking more than you need, like hoarding resources. And, but it goes beyond that too. I mean, there's truthfulness and there's, non-stealing and, I'm racing through these, but, it's all the stuff that you would, if you were like entrusted with telling someone how to be a good person. It's just the basic stuff. It's nothing more than that. But it's more complicated than you might think because we all have our histories, right? We all have our trauma and our things that we've been through, lessons we've learned, rightly or wrongly, conclusions we've drawn from the things we've been through that might be right on or might be really skewed. And so it's your frame of reference. It's your frame of reference, right? All the things that you've ever been through in your life, you're filtering. You're filtering. So anytime you've been hurt or betrayed or disappointed or, like you are, especially as you're a kid, you're like a little sponge, you're gleaning information and you're trying to make sense of the world. And sometimes the things that you're kind of like, understanding or they're not quite it. And so hopefully and then sometimes the things that you're actually being taught in your family of origin are also not it. There are a lot of people who believe a lot of things in this world. And sometimes, you got to get out in the world and then figure out, what do I think? And that's that whole critical thinking. And like, now I'm living my life and I'm out in the world and I'm seeing how things are. And maybe some of these things that I learned are not really resonating anymore. They're not matching my experience here. So maybe I need to rethink some of that stuff. Hopefully we all go through that. And so that is where clear seeing comes in. It's like, okay, first of all, let me understand that when I walk into a situation, unless I've done a lot of work on it, I'm bringing every situation I've ever been in with me. And so it was helpful to me when I first started learning about this, to think of it as actual like glasses, like your frames of reference, right? You have this like this, I don't know, think about like a serious thick set of glasses on your nose, and you've got these lenses and you're wearing these glasses wherever you go, and everything that's happening you're filtering through these glasses, but also the glasses are full of everything you've already been through. And so they can really fog up your ability to see what's in front of you. And just as an example, if you've been hurt in your like romantic relationships, you've been let down, you've been betrayed, you've been cheated on, you've been lied to, whatever it is, right? And you maybe you get out of that relationship and you go into the next one, you're going to bring all that stuff with you unless you do a lot of work on it to recognize like, okay, maybe there were some things going on for me that drew me into that situation, some stuff that, old stuff I was trying to heal in my present situation. And also not everyone is the same, you know? And so that is what happened with that person, and now here's a new person in front of me. And in order to really see them clearly, I gotta like wipe my lenses clean and let go of all those stories and ideas and things that have happened so I can just see, who is this person, you know? And so that's the romantic relationship is just an example, because I think a lot of people can quickly relate to that, but it's everything. If you are walking around with stories that you're telling yourself, and I mean, again, here are just some examples. I have a friend who thinks everyone else gets the breaks. It's easier for other people than it is for me. That's a story, and that's a pretty serious story. Like if you're walking around with that, it's going to affect the way that you're moving through the world, the way that you're interacting with people, your expectations. A lot of people walk into situations and they're like, oh, nothing's going to happen. This isn't going to go well. I said, well, if you walk in with that energy, it's kind of like you're skewing the the results of the experiment, right? You're like, you're not walking in fresh. And so ideally, that's the goal, is to be able to understand we have a frame of reference and do some work trying to get really clear on like, what are the things that I've been through and the lessons that I have learned that are real and true and serving me and productive? And what are the lessons and things I've gleaned from what has happened that may not be real, might not be true, and might not be serving me, and that's that internal work, self-study. It's called svadhyaya in the, yoga practice. And it's just this idea of like, what's driving me, what has happened in my past that has kind of like informed the way that I feel about myself and the world around me. What am I bringing into every situation with me? And what are some things that maybe I want to put down, so that I could walk into situations with less weight and less stuff fogging up my lenses. So this idea of clear seeing it's still complex, because even if you do all that work, right, you still have to like, am I seeing as clearly as I can here? And then you have your things that are like raw nerves. I hate to say triggers because I feel like it's been so overused now that it's just like meaningless at this point. But those places in you that are still a little bit raw, that maybe there's still a little bit of healing that needs to happen. And you can recognize those when you're in an interaction with someone and you're very suddenly at like a 10 or a 12. And it maybe is over something relatively small from the outside, but just there's something in it that has made you feel, whatever it might be, disrespected or invisible, or, like less than, or like some old thing that's been tapped, that has caused this very intense reaction in your present. And so the idea is to know that stuff about yourself, like to understand what are what are the little like pitfalls for me, or things I need to be on the alert for that are probably going to be, if somebody hits that nerve, I need to be ready to recognize that and recenter myself, so I'm not bringing all of this heat and emotion into this moment that really maybe only requires like a level 2 kind of response instead of a level 12, nuclear meltdown. Um, and so that's part of video of clear seeing. And what happened for me is when I started to wrap my head around these concepts, and viveka means discernment, right? This idea that we are going to try to figure out like what is real versus what is unreal, or what is like permanent versus what is fleeting. And almost everything is fleeting, right? Almost everything is in a constant state of change, and just like we are, it's the nature of anything living, is that it's in a constant state of flux, which makes us vulnerable. It's really hard to, we like to be able to pin things down and count on some things. And the truth is that the ground underneath us is always going to be shifting, and the feelings inside us are always going to be shifting. And so, the more comfortable you are with that reality, the easier things flow and the better the ride. And the more you're like scrambling to grip onto something, the more you suffer, because there's really not a lot to hold on to that is permanent. One of the things that I feel at this point in my, and I'm 53, is like, I know some people from elementary school that I went to school with from like the time I was 6 to the time I was 13, and then I didn't see them for years. And we got back in touch over the pandemic, and then we ended up actually seeing each other in person in New York City about a year ago. And like, there is something that is, I think, it's like your, whatever you want to call it, your spark, your soul, like whatever the word is for you, your essence. There is something in each person that is really lasting. Any one of these 20 people that I spent those years with, I would have recognized on the street anywhere, no matter what, because there's like, you can, it's the same person in there. It's the same, there's something, that I think you arrive with that is like your spark, and you're either stoking that or you aren't, or like things are happening where, you've got a lot of armor on, and so it's harder for that like spark to really take on the light and energy that it could. And that's our work, right? When that happens, is to try to drop the armor and figure out like, why do I feel like I need this armor? Like, what has happened here, and how can I reassure myself that I'm safe? Like, I am the grown up in charge now, and I care about myself, and I care about my well-being, and I'm not going to like engage with people who aren't going to be kind or going to be reckless with my heart. Like, I'm not going to do that, And once you're trusting yourself, it's a lot easier to open. And so I was talking about that. Now, I will just really quickly touch on, like, I grew up in 2 households. My parents split when I was 4, where there was a lot of secret keeping in each household. So with my dad, it was all the, like, he had a lot, it was a womanizer. He was just to a degree that is hard for me to even, no matter how much I write about it or talk about it, it's hard for me to convey like what was going on there, 70s, whatever. But like, my dad was really, kind of next level with that. And he hurt a lot. He hurt all the women in his life. And he had 3 children, and he hurt all of his kids. Like, everybody paid the price for that, but he also had a lot of great qualities. Anyway, bottom line, a lot of secret keeping going on at my dad's, and a lot of secret keeping going on at my mom's, because she was an alcoholic and nobody was gonna name that or deal with it or acknowledge it. And so that, I think, is the environment that was really, it became, I mean, both households had their own gifts, let's call them, for me eventually, where I had to like figure a lot of that stuff out. And I can look at those as gifts, because I don't know that I would have the same level of empathy that I do if I hadn't kind of come out of these 2 specific households. Like, it was a lot of work and a lot of stuff to kind of get through and unravel and heal, but it has really helped me understand when people are hurting or they're having a hard time pulling themselves out of like childhood trauma, or it's there's such a deep hurt there that it's really hard to find joy and peace in the present. Like I get it, so I am grateful that I had the specific parents that I did, even though a lot of it was very difficult at the time. And with my mom, what happened is nobody, as I got older, and I think my mom and I, we just had this like very intense bond. And, she would say things to me when I was little, like, it's you and me against the world. I didn't really know what she meant, but I liked the idea of being on this team with her because I never felt like I had her. I never felt like I had her love or her attention or her approval. I was always like trying to earn that. And when she met my stepdad and then eventually they had my brother, as I grew up in that household, there were a lot of things that happened. I think I did feel a little bit on the outside because they were intact, right? She was in the house with my stepdad and their son, my brother, but I'd have to leave and go over to my dad's half the time. And, and I was very attached to my brother when he was born, and there's a lot of stuff there. But I was also the only kind of the lone voice in my mother's entire circle as I got older saying something's wrong. Like, my mom's not okay. She needs help. Like, this is not normal to be getting so drunk so many times a week that it's hard to, like, she can't walk without help, or like she's slurring, or she's doing things or saying things that are really painful, and she would turn her rage on me. And so it was difficult. I did feel like she was not like that with my stepdad. She was not like that with my brother. So it did feel very personal. It was directed at me. And it did make me feel like there's something unlovable here. Like, I'm unlovable. My mom doesn't love me. She loves my brother, she loves my stepdad, but she really has a hard time loving me, so it's me. And when I would try to say something is wrong, like she's not okay, I was met with, she is fine, she's a social drinker, you're overly sensitive, you're dramatic, you're like Sarah Bernhardt, that was my nickname. And those labels that are put on you when you're a kid like that, it's tough, especially if you're getting it from like more than one of the adults in the situation, because you trust at that point that the people around you know what's going on. And so it really did. I did grow up in this environment doubting my ability to perceive correctly. I thought, well, maybe, all of her, and that's what I did not know, is that in an alcoholic system, that is what happens, right? There's the alcoholic, and then, they often surround themselves with other alcoholics, because then it seems it's normalized, and enablers, people who are not going to jump in the line of fire and be like, you have a problem, you need help. And so I really was like the lone voice saying, this is not okay. Like, she's not okay. She's hurting and she needs help. And I was just completely shut down again and again and again. And so when I came out of that eventually, which I couldn't wait, I skipped my senior year of high school and I went right to Barnard College at Columbia. I just wanted out. And so I used my brain to get me out as fast as I could. And I did all of my, I taught myself the second year of American history because I had to, in order to take the achievement test at the end of, it was at the end of 10th grade. Yeah, that's correct, because I left high school at the end of 11th grade. So there were a lot of things that I had to do at the end of 10th grade that you wouldn't normally have to do. And in order to get ready to do them, I had to study. And so that's what I did. But it turns out, getting out of there early didn't really excuse me, go the way that I had hoped, because I wasn't fully ready, to be out in the world. And I ended up back home a couple of times when everything just kind of blew up, when I hadn't made like good choices, and I'd end up back at home, trying to figure out like, why can't I get it together? And that was part of what I was talking about in the essay, is these brass rings. I had done all of these. I had done what society tells you need to do in order to be happy. I had gotten the straight A's. I had starved myself. I had, gone to a really good school. I graduated. So I'm like, all right, well, I'm got that one, got this one. I'm collecting these like brass rings, external, things that people are saying, this is what you need in order to be happy, and it isn't working. So I've just got all these like brass rings at my feet, and I'm not okay. Like when I was 20, I was like I went through a real bout of, I think pretty serious depression, 2021, and a lot of anxiety. People would often think that I was aloof, but I was not aloof. I just had anxiety, like social anxiety. I was very shy, and people that I became really close with would eventually say, when I first met you, I thought you were kind of like whatever. I was like, yeah, no, it's just, no. I wasn't comfortable in my own skin. I didn't feel safe in the world. With people that I was really close to, yeah, I would be exuberant sometimes, or, definitely knew how to have fun. But if I didn't know you, like, no. And so it was tough. When I went up to school, I didn't know anyone. All of my friends they were in their senior year of high school. I didn't know anyone at college. And so it was tough in the beginning. But what ended up happening is I got to this point of, okay, I've graduated from the really good school. I've like done everything I think that I'm supposed to do. I'm trying to find that person to like complete me. And I'm putting that in air quotes. I know you can't see, because I bought into that, I bought into that stuff too, as many people do. And nothing was working, nothing, I wasn't happy. So it's that whole formula of like external validation is going to make us happy. And it's a trap, because you can get into this thing of like, okay, I'll be happy if I lose 10 pounds. So then you lose 10 pounds, and then you're still not happy, and you think, well, maybe like 5 more, and then I'll be happy. And then maybe 5 more. And basically you get to a point where it's like, how should I just disappear? Would that be small enough? Like at what point is that going to lead to my happiness? Or you're told, like, if you have, a better job or more money or a faster car, or like any number of things you can add on. It happens in yoga sometimes. People are like, if I could press a handstand in the middle of the room, then I'd be happy. No, you won't. No, you won't. If you are not happy inside, it does not matter. None of those things are going to do it for you. So I was feeling at that time in my life, my early 20s, like, what's wrong with me? Like, why isn't any of this stuff working? And am I just so broken that it doesn't matter, like, how many things I achieve? It's never going to be good enough. Is that where I am? Like, I'm broken. I'm unlovable. So it doesn't matter what I do. Or is it that I haven't grabbed enough of these, like, brass rings yet? Or, like, I don't know, like what's going on. And so that is right around the time that I was starting to discover this philosophy underneath the asana practice in yoga, like the philosophy, right? And really digging into it. And so this idea of just seeing things as they are, right? Just like forget about everything else. Just try your best to see things as they are, which means like they're not always going to be the way that we want them to be or the way that we need them to be, but just to really do your best to see things as they are. And that might sound like, yeah, like obviously, but sometimes we really don't want to see things as they are. And for example, if you are in love with someone, or you think you're in love with someone, you're hooked in and you're trying to like heal an old childhood wound in your current situation with this person who you're feeling the same dynamic you felt from when you were a kid in your present, and you think, well, if I can solve it here, that'll fix it from back there. People do that all the time. I certainly try to do that. It never works, because you've attracted someone into your life because the dynamic is familiar. You get hooked in, you feel sick, and you think, well, this must be love. I can't eat. And it's like, it's not love. This is like you're in a, you're in a stranglehold with someone, trying to get something from them that they won't be able to give you. And all it's going to do, it's not going to heal that original wound that you have. It's just going to like compound your pain. But sometimes you have to do it a couple times to figure out, maybe more than a couple. You just got to you've got to ride that ride until you realize, oh, this doesn't work either. And so sometimes you don't want to see the truth. You don't want to see. You want to tell yourself, it's not that this person doesn't love me. It's that they have their own trauma that they're dealing with. And so that's why they're scared of like intimacy, or they are having a hard time trusting, or it's why they want me to call 20 times a day, because they feel insecure because that other person cheated on them. Like, you can tell yourself a whole bunch of things about what is happening that and if you find yourself in that kind of situation where you are like telling your friends, oh no, like they really love me, it's just blah, 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 like that's not a good sign. You're probably not in a good thing, because it shouldn't be that hard. And I think people do that a lot. They don't want to see what is in front of them, because it means things are going to have to change, or it means they're going to go through a heartbreak. And what happened for me in my like mid 20s, when I started to really get my head around this stuff, was like, oh, there's so much relief. Like there's so much relief in this idea, of just like not kidding yourself, and not, explaining things away that don't feel good. Like, you don't have to, if something doesn't feel good, you can just decide you're leaving. It doesn't matter why. It doesn't matter if it makes sense. You don't have to like explain yourself. Like, you can absolutely just say this, for whatever reason, whether it's me, you, the moon, whatever, this does not work. This hurts. Being in this interaction hurts. Therefore, I am going to leave. And it was kind of like a life-changing thing. Now, it didn't take hold right away. It still took, like any time you need to rewire something in your system, the first thing is like getting the idea, grasping the idea, seeing this different path that you hadn't really seen before. And then it's like figuring out, how do I walk that path? How do I walk a path of like trusting my gut when I've never known how to do that? When people have been telling me my whole life that what I think is happening is not what's happening. That when I say, I think my mom's an alcoholic, and the people around me say, no, it's you. She's a social drinker. She's fine. You are overly sensitive. Like, it does really put you in this place where you don't trust your own ability to perceive reality correctly. And so what happened for me is just a lot of reality testing, and I was writing about this in the essay, every trusted person in my life, if I was in a situation with someone and I felt confused or overwhelmed or hurt, I would go to this trusted, whatever person, people, and say like, hey, is it just me? Or does this seem, fill in the blank, like strange, confusing, hurtful, thoughtless, manipulative, controlling to you too? Like, I did not trust my own, I would trust what I was feeling was real, but I wouldn't trust that what I was feeling was right. So I would go and check with someone I trusted. Like, would you feel this way too if this was happening in your situation? And, eventually I was just like, wait a second. I need to that's the thing I need to work on, is trusting myself. I don't want to be in a situation for my whole life where I'm like, I'm feeling really hurt by that, but is it me? Is it like me and my trauma, or is it real? And that's that whole thing of discernment, right? Like, what is real? And to me, it was the path toward happiness. And the other thing and really the final thing I wanted to talk about today is definition of terms, right? So what does happiness mean? Like, is happiness in your mind? Are you running through the fields, the sun is shining, the birds are chirping, and you're like, oh, it's so great to be alive? Because like if that's your definition of happiness and you're expecting to be happy all the time, like, good luck. Because I mean, most people are not going to be like running through the fields every day, like yay. So what is it, right? Like, what is it for you? And you've got to think about these things, because what it is for me doesn't have to be what it is for you. For me, happiness is like being at ease inside myself. Knowing that I'm not broken, I am lovable. Like, I'm not. That's long since healed in my wiring, in my brain, in my heart. Like, I'm not confused about that anymore. Those labels that were sort of put on me as like, those are gone. Like, those don't hold any power over me. So happiness for me is like knowing who I am and having my bio and my actions line up. That's what happiness feels like. It's like who I'm telling you I am is who I'm being, and that is happiness that's my definition. And also like having work that I love and feeling like I'm, using whatever gifts I might have to the best of my ability. Like, I'm trying to share things that I hope are helpful. That's inspiring for me. That's fulfilling for me, to be in this kind of conversation with people, to read the comments when I write something, that maybe touch someone or help someone. I mean, it doesn't get better than that, And then there's obviously all the people in my life who I love, like beyond my ability to like even put into words. And I'm very lucky. Like, I have really good people in my life. So those are the things that for me define happiness. And everyone has to do their own like work on what the definitions are for these different things. And I think the important words are the ones to really make sure you got a handle on, like happiness, love. Like, what does love mean to you? Sometimes, and I was writing about this too, like, I know what I mean when I say I love you, but you might not know what I mean, because you might mean something else when you say I love you. And I grew up, like, my experience with my mom in particular was her love was conditional. That's how I felt. That might not have been the case, but that's how it felt to me. That if I wanted her love, I better toe the line and not step a toe out of line. Like, I better get those straight A's, and I better look right, and I better act right. And that meant, like, it was okay for me to be happy in her house. It was okay for me to be serious. It was okay for me to be helpful, kind, understanding, patient. It was not okay for me to be sad or angry. So like, good luck, right? Good luck. What do you do with those feelings when they arise? I just push them. I didn't even know how I felt by the time I got out into the world. It was hard. That was some work I had to do, just being able to really identify how I felt. That to me is part of being happy, is being able to know how you feel and lean into it. And sometimes you don't know why you feel the way that you feel, but just being able to know how you feel. I'm feeling anxious, or I'm feeling scared, or I'm feeling joyful, or I'm feeling, grief right now, or I'm feeling longing. Like, being able to identify how you feel, that also gives me this sense of peace and steadiness, because I'm like, okay, I'm awake, I'm present, and I know how I feel. And that to me is it's a really good feeling. So, and love for me is like, if I love someone, then, you're loving the whole person, like, with whatever everybody's got their stuff. I have my stuff, you have your stuff, we all have our things. But you're seeing the person clearly. You're not in some dazed. Listen, the first 3 months of any relationship, if we're talking about a romantic relationship, there's that lust dust stuff that it fogs the lenses, and then eventually, that subsides a little bit so you can see clearly. And it takes a long time to get to know people, and you get to see people in lots of different situations for an extended period of time before you really, really know. But for me, when you're like loving someone means really seeing them as clearly as you can and wanting for them what they want for themselves and being excited for them when they're excited, celebrating their wins, and then also like holding a mirror up when maybe they aren't like living up to their, full potential, best selves. Like, and I was talking about that too. Like one of my closest girlfriends I've known since I was 14. And I mean, we've been through it all. We've literally been through it all. We went to high school together. She eventually came to Barnard. We've been through like marriages, divorce, like post-divorce, all of it. And we live in different states, and we have for a long time now. And like, when I say I love you to her, I don't have to explain myself. Just like if she says it to me, she doesn't, it means like, if you're not okay, I'm getting on a plane. If you tell me you need to talk to me right now, like now, I'm going to stop what I'm doing and get on the phone. I'm going to tell you when you're being an asshat, just like I hope you're going to tell me. If somebody crosses you, like they're off my list too. I'm not going to let you give up on yourself. I'm always going to be here to root you on. Like, I don't have to explain my definition, to her. And so that is ideal, I think, for the people who are closest to you in your life. When you have a similar definition of things, it makes it a lot easier. There's a lot of liberation and a lot of flow going on at that point, because you don't have to stop and be like, like when you do this thing, it makes me feel like you don't have to spend a lot of time explaining why you feel the way you feel, or the more that your outlook is similar, it makes it easier. It doesn't mean that you cannot be really close to people who have different definitions. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that, by and large, if the people closest to you are of a similar, they're working with a dictionary that has similar definitions, it just makes it easier. There's less time spent, misunderstanding. Or feeling confused or hurt, or so that clear seeing. Oh, say can you see? I hope this was a meaningful talk, a helpful talk. It seemed like the comments in the essay this week were really heartfelt, and I can't tell you, I started to talk about it, it means more to me than I can really express, being in this kind of conversation. And when people respond to the talks here, to the podcast, like it's incredibly gratifying. And I do think one of the best things in life is connection. And so I thank you for, being open to this kind of conversation, and I'm sending you lots of love. Till next time.